Hi everyone, I'm sorry that I couldn't be there to give you this speech in person. I was able to be there for the second of the 3 courses that Christiana offered, and I had a really good time, and I'm really thankful that I was invited to share my story with you all. The first quality recording that we had wasn't very good. I had a really bad cold at the time too, so it was kind of hard to understand me. I'm getting over that now, so I figured I would just re-record it and send that to him and see if he wanted to use that, and maybe better. So I know that this is probably coming to you guys at the end of the course, and I think that it's kind of appropriate to tie everything together at the end, and just to give you, a look into how a family member could feel with these kinds of issues, and how it was dealt with, and just kind of share my and Jason's experience with you. If it can help one other person, then I'm really, thankful, and I hope that this message goes far. So I'm just going to go ahead and read the speech that I wrote, so bear with me. Okay, good evening everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Angela Booth. I worked as an EMT for about 8 years for a few different companies, including Christiana Fire Department, St. Francis Hospital, EMS in the city of Wilmington, as well as some out-of-state organizations. I moved away to New York for PA school about 2.5 years ago. That's where I am now. I'm currently in my final year of clinical rotations, and I have no idea where the time went. So it feels like just yesterday, I was climbing into an ambulance responding to fireboard at all hours of the day and the night. Every time I hear a siren now, it still hits me right in the gut, but for many different reasons. I was contacted by Rich a few weeks ago, and he told me that he was arranging a stress management course for you guys. He informed me of another one of our own who has struggled with mental health and thoughts of suicide. He asked me what my thoughts were and if I would be comfortable in sharing my story with you all, in hopes to shed some light on the topic of mental health, depression, and suicide. So here goes. For those of you who had the pleasure of sitting in an ambulance with me for hours, you most likely know about my personal life because, well, let's face it, you can't spend 12 to 24 hours a day in a box with another person and not get to know their life. If you have, I'm sure that you remember the stories of my roller coaster relationship. I had the privilege of loving the most amazing, hilarious, giant-hearted, handsome, caring man that I've ever known. Jason was my very best friend. We were very good friends since we were 14 years old, and when we finally began to date about 6 years ago, I knew that he was the one. To everyone that had the pleasure of knowing Jason, he was literally the life of the party. The hilarious one that would do anything to get a laugh, no matter how ridiculous it seemed. He would bend over backwards for a complete stranger in their time of need, because that is just what he did. He gave me the absolute best years of my life. Loving Jason did not come without a price. Jason suffered with depression for most of his life. It began when he was about 11, and he asked his mom, "Why do I feel so sad all the time?" How do you answer this question from a child? Those are the years when life is supposed to be easy, right? He could ask this question and then go right back to playing and acting a fool, as young boys do. After many episodes and a few admissions to Meadowood, things started to look up for Jason. Years went by, he became established with a trade that he absolutely adored, and by the time he and I were together, he was working as an HVAC plumbing mechanic, making amazing money, building his clientele, and hoping to start his own company. By 29 years old, he purchased what would turn out to be our first home, finished 8 years of apprenticeship and schooling, and purchased his dream truck, an amazing Ford Raptor. He had everything he'd ever wanted and was on his way to an amazing and promising future. We talked about marriage and starting a family after I finished school, and I couldn't have been happier. I tell you all of this because depression is an invisible monster. Whether it's demons from your past that haunt you, or traumatic events that you cannot forget, they are always there. The happiest, most hilarious, carefree person on the outside could be fighting a losing battle on the inside, and how could we ever know? They say that the happiest people are those who have to try the hardest to hide the sadness in their hearts. Imagine how exhausting this must be. Most days were amazing with Jason. I've never been happier, and some days were a complete struggle, but I would do them all over again, 1,000,000 times, to have him back, to hear his voice again. There were many times that he told me he could not wait to die. His job had put so much pressure on him, both physically and emotionally. Now you may say, really? He had an HVAC job. How hard could that possibly be? Compared to what we do in EMS, it's completely different. He would leave for work at 7 a.m. and not be done working his regular and his side jobs until midnight on most nights. In the busy seasons, he'd roll out of bed in the middle of the night to fix the heater for an old couple or a couple who had young children. His job had physically worn him down. He had multiple knee surgeries to try to repair torn ligaments, and he still could not make it through the day without some extra help. Towards his last months, he began using Percocets to make it through the pain. He had to keep pushing and pushing. No matter how much I begged him to take it easy, it wasn't happening. How many of us can relate to this? We work ourselves to death, work injury after work injury, hours upon hours. It got to a point where the depression began to take over him. The lack of sleep, the use of painkillers, the constant pressure was all swallowing the man that I loved more than anything in this world. The text messages from him began coming more and more frequently. I wish that I was dead. My life sucks. I can't stand waking up anymore. This isn't fair for you. You'd be better off without me. Find somebody better. No matter how good and amazing and happy somebody looks on the outside, there is a whole other world happening on the inside. How do we know this unless we ask? It was 2 days after my summer break from PA school began. I was so excited to come home and spend the entire summer with my family and with Jason and to just enjoy each other. The last month, he hadn't been acting himself. He was reserved most of the time. I started hearing from our good friends that he wasn't acting right, that maybe he was using the pills too much. When he wasn't working, he was sleeping, or he was blowing them off saying that he had a side job when he really didn't. He was withdrawing himself from everyone that loved him. I got home and tried to talk to him, and he still wasn't acting himself, even with me. He wouldn't even let me touch him. I found out after the fact that just 1 month before this happened, he had asked my father for permission to marry me. None of this made any sense to me. And then began the absolute worst day of my life. May 20th, 2014. He had to leave for work in the morning, and I went to visit my family over my mom's house. I began receiving more texts from him that day. I am just so tired of feeling sad. I wish the brakes would go out on my van. And all I could do was shower him with all of the love that I had and tell him how it would get better, that we would get him help. We had tried numerous medications at this point, and he had been in and out of the hospital for attempts about 3 times in the last 3 years, which thankfully I was there to stop him. He said that he would handle it himself. I wasn't sure what that meant. I told him to call me as soon as he finished work and that I would be home. I hadn't heard from him for 2 hours, so I called, and he answered. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm laying in bed. You were supposed to be here, and you weren't here." I said, "I'm coming right now. I was waiting for your call. I'll be right there." My mom lives about 2 minutes from our house, right next to Station 6. He stopped me in my words, and this is what he said. "The dog is in the backyard, and the front door is unlocked. I want you to call the cops. I don't want you to come here. I don't want you to see this. I can't do this anymore. I'm sorry. I quit." And there was silence on the other end of the line. That's when my heart stopped. The rest of what happened that day was a complete and utter mess. I couldn't even tell you my name if you'd asked me. I made the phone calls. I called 911, the same familiar dispatch voices that I've heard so many times before. How could this be my life? I told them what he said, and they would send an ambulance and police, and I rushed over to my house. Cops had the house surrounded when I got there, and they wouldn't let me in. Because we weren't legally married yet, they treated me like a nobody and tried to force me away from my home. I told them it was me who called, and I lived there, and they wouldn't give me any details. I can't even tell you the other events during this time. My world was spinning. I knew he did it. I knew that it was over. I saw all of the familiar things that we do when things go really bad on a call. I heard the siren stop, which meant that BLS was called off, and it was an ALS response only. I knew what that meant. I saw police put on blue gloves. It was then that a medic unit pulled up in front of my house, and I thought, thank God, someone can tell me something. I knew these people from work. I know it's terrible that I'm sharing these details with you, but I want you all to understand. I want you to understand every part of it. The familiar face that I saw on the unit that day will never leave my mind. The way that this was treated was absolutely appalling, and I cannot even put into words the disrespect that I felt for myself and for Jason. I tell you this so that hopefully you can learn from this and never treat a family member this way, no matter how desensitized this job may make us. I asked the paramedic as they exited my home, "Can you tell me anything, please?" To which they replied, "Is he your family?" "Yes," I said, "I live here, this is our home. Can you please tell me anything?" They won't tell me anything. The reply that I got, the one that replays in my mind time and time again. The ignorance of this individual literally kills me. Those 4 words, "Well, he's definitely dead." My life changed forever in that moment. To those 4 words. How can someone be so cruel? People who say that suicide is selfish always reference the survivors. They say it's selfish to leave children, spouses, and other family members behind, and that they're not thinking about the survivors. What they don't know is that those very loved ones are the reason many people hang on for just one more day. They do think about the survivors, probably up until the very last moment in many cases, which is what I believe in my whole heart is what happened with Jason. But the soul-crushing depression that consumes them leaves them feeling like there is no alternative, like the only way to get out is to opt out, and that's a devastating thought to endure. Until you've stared down at that level of depression, until you've lost your soul to a sea of emptiness and darkness, you don't get to make those judgments. You might not understand it, and you are certainly entitled to your own feelings and opinions, but making those judgments and spreading that kind of negativity won't help the next person. In fact, it only hurts others. I am a suicide survivor. Some days I feel like I'm doing more drowning than surviving, but I'm doing my very best with the cards that I've been given. I'm dedicating my life to make sure that Jason isn't forgotten, that this happened so that I can share his story to help other people. I want people to know that there is help out there. You don't have to be afraid of being judged or being labeled. Please don't put your loved ones through the hurt that I've endured. Let it be a message for you, a message that you can share with those that you love or someone you know who may be struggling. There is always hope. I believe in the organizations that raise money for mental health. If we only understood the mind as well as we understood other chronic diseases, how different could our world be? What if we had mental health checkups, the way that we have yearly physicals? We need to break the stigma and realize that it's okay. It's okay to need a little help sometimes. We all do. I believe that everyone could benefit from therapy, whether you think you need it or not, especially in this profession. As EMS providers, we are the people who are workaholics. We work too much, we sleep too little, and we eat like crap on most days. We could use a little extra help. We are the ones who literally walk into other people's living, breathing nightmares when they aren't able to face them themselves. We are the ones that they call and trust to pull them through on their worst days. We see the horrifying images, we hear the screams and cries for help, and we smell the unforgettable smells. It is completely unnatural for us to not need some help from time to time. It is so important to remember that we are human. We cannot simply turn it off when we get home from work. It's something that can replay again and again in our minds. I'll be the first one to tell you that I've suffered from PTSD from the day that I lost Jason. It's been 16 months since that day, and there are still things that send me into a panic. I couldn't stand the sound of sirens for almost the whole first year since he passed, because it brought flashbacks of me sobbing on the curb, and then those 4 words. I couldn't come back to EMS, and that killed me. I couldn't watch movies with guns because of the aftermath that I had to handle in our bedroom. Just like some calls for you guys, they're engraved in your minds forever. Burnout is a real thing. There are times when we may feel like we are at the end of our rope and there is nowhere else to go, but there is. Look beside you, at your brothers and your sisters in the service. Talk to that partner you're stuck with in the box for hours on end. Ask for help. Ask the person who cracks jokes all the time if they're okay. You may be surprised with the answer that you get. Sometimes all it takes is another person to listen, to simply be there, and a life could be saved. I think that what each and every one of you do is amazing. and I'm thankful that you're here. Always remember to take care of yourselves and to take care of each other. And thank you for letting me share our story with you. If it helped one person today, then my mission is accomplished. Thank you all.